There we go. All right, y'all. So welcome. I have my Jasons and me, Shannon Borum. So y'all welcome to Starlight. I'm not sure why I have a little weird glitch on the computer, but today we're going to talk about this thing called ordered development. It's January 27th. Thanks for being here, guys. I'm glad to see everybody. We adjusted our schedule to just do like one per month. Have you guys been able to go to the Spanish or French PLCs that we're doing in the state? Yeah, Jason's gone to French. Well, Jason Dorick has gone to French. All right.
I have not.
All right. Jason, you're Spanish, right? In Middle
That
Georgia?
is correct. That is
Yeah,
correct.
that's
But
what I
we're
thought.
almost on the state. We're almost on the state line in Valdosta. So
Oh, down. Okay, further south than what I had in my head. So there is
sure.
always the Spanish PLC for high school and or middle school. There's two separate ones. There's a high school French, Jason, that you and I could go to, and I can't remember when, but all that information is on the website. Hello, Johnny. Good to see you.
Hola.
Johnny
Hi,
is my colleague
how
down
you
here in
doing?
Griffin. All
Mhm.
right,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna skip the next slide because I am not a guest. I'm just a person. We don't really need norms. It's the norms generally are like, hey, be respectful of guests. If you have a question, put it in the chat box. If there's a grammar or culture thing, let's take care of that offline. But y'all, it's pretty open and free when it's just me. Like, pipe in feedback, chat, open your mic. I like conversation more than I like, instruction and one-way communication. Okay, so here's our plan for today. We're going to talk about the theory of ordered development. Then we'll look at like planning ahead. I'm always going to end each day asking what kind of needs and wants we have, and maybe we can make some things happen if you have a specific need or want. And if you need a certificate of attendance, it will be there. Okay, so as a review and as a general disclaimer, all of these things I got from Martina Beck's The Comprehensible Classroom. I did her acquisition boot camp over the summer, and so I'm pulling a lot of those resources because I thought they were just really invaluable, especially for those of us who may have gone to teacher school earlier than what I went to teacher school, or later than what I went. I don't know. So I went to teacher school like in the early 2000s, and that while we talked about comprehensible input, I don't know that we necessarily went as in depth as what we're seeing now. Let's get started. Okay, tell me if this is what you're used to teaching. So that's my textbook, Te Branche. We teach the present tense in level 1. We teach the imperfect tense in level 2, and then we move on to perfect past. We move in a linear grammatical motion. Is that what you guys do? You have one tense in level 1, a couple tenses in level 2, a different tense in level 3. We sort of spiral up that way. Johnny, that's kind of how ours are too, because we follow a textbook, yeah?
Yeah, so we normally try to go to the scaffolding from the very simple present
Mhm.
thing, and then we go to in the level 2, Spanish 2, the preteric sense. Okay, I mean the past,
Yep,
indefinite one, and then so
exactly. So
then
that's
in the Spanish 3, so we try to have all of them together, yeah, in
well,
different stages again.
yeah. So I think traditionally as a content area, we have had in our head, we're not going to do past tense in level 1. That's not what we do in level 1. We're not going to talk
Yeah, I
about
got you.
future in level 3 because it's a level 2 thing. We're going to stick
Yeah,
only to present tense in level 1. And so um, we're going to circle back to that in a second, but that's sort of the ground where we all are. And as I told you in the acquisition bootcamp, we got a lot of stuff from Dr. Bill Van Patten. I think some of us are familiar with him. I know I've referenced him before in Starlight meetings. So he's a linguist and he's also a Spanish teacher. And he's based in, I want to say Minnesota, but maybe Michigan. I'm a Southerner. I can't remember the states up there and connect which one he's with. But like it's one of the um, so the thing that he sort of relayed to us was that in any language, learners are going to follow the same sequence or pattern as they acquire a linguistic feature. Heads up, it's not present, past, and future in that order like we teach it. Okay, so acquisition is completely independent of instruction or other factors. So nothing can alter the order in which we learn languages. Pause and think about that for a second. We are instructors of language, but acquisition is completely independent of instruction. Okay? So we learn from a development sequence, which doesn't happen all at once, but it happens over time. You guys have seen this with kids, both kids that we teach, maybe kids that you have, your own language development. It takes time, obviously. So here's an example of this whole order development and sort of how it happens in English. So the sequence is negation, like how to say do not. So stage one, someone would say no plus the thing. No drink soda. Okay? Is it accurate? No. Do we get the meaning across? Yes. Stage two, subject plus no plus the object. I no drink soda. Then stage three, as you can see, adds in the don't. I know I don't drink soda. It's not necessarily grammatically correct all the time. Then stage four is emergence of modals. I can't drink soda. Who's a linguist nerd? Jason, I feel like this is a you question. Can you clarify what a modal is?
Well, the modals, yeah, the like the être or the devoir, pouvoir, the should, could,
Like the action words that go before something, right? Like
Right,
like
right.
can't, right? Okay. And so stage five would be complete correct sentence, right? So we go through these stages for every linguistic skill, every linguistic thing that we're learning in either language. And so the question was raised, well, why don't we have a lesson plan that matches this? And Dr. Bill Van Patten's response was, think of every single thing that you learn and writing a sequence for that. Like understanding the sequence would be massive, right? Like it would be a bazillion page textbook. It's not feasible. But the idea that we learn in a sequence that is unalterable by instruction really kind of like shook me on the inside, because I'm like, but wait, I've taught Passé Composé, I've taught Dr. and Mrs. Vandertramp for 3 days now. Why have they not mastered Dr. and Mrs. Vandertramp? And why can't they say it just fluently? Do y'all have these issues where you teach, and they still don't get, and you don't know why, and you beat your head against the board because you're like, I've taught it. Why didn't you learn it? You guys okay, am I the only one who feels that way? Johnny, you almost shook your head for a second. Please tell me you have that feeling every now and again too.
Yeah, well, let me tell you that there is a joke, because it's a real thing. So when students are learning, the first thing they need to know is about the age, and they learn the years, you see? But they go to Spanish too. They say, how do I say, come on, this is for real? And then you are in Spanish 3 trying to check out, for example, a personality that is famous, etc., etc. We're going to talk about. And then I say, okay, when was he born? I say, I don't know how to say that. Really? I'm your teacher. I'm your teacher in the same level. How come? And they have a main visual head help here. And then they say, okay, let me turn around and try to learn this semester.
Well, so the reason, we're beating our heads against the wall because we're like, we have taught it, but they haven't learned it or they haven't acquired it. It may not be because of our teaching. It's probably because of this. It takes time, as you all know. None of us went to school for a semester and became fluent, right? It takes time, and there's like linguistic pathways that have to happen. So here's a Spanish example that won't make sense to me and Jason, but it might. As soon as it loads. Oh, here we go. Okay, so this is something I know that our Spanish teachers struggle with, ser versus estar. My mentee teacher is like, oh man, I teach them this every day. We go over it every day. They still don't get it. And by the end of the semester, they're like, well, they get it a little bit. Okay, so stage one, there's no verb at all. Okay, so in this one, they would say Juan alto. Okay, no verb. Stage two, they use ser for most of it. And I don't even want to, y'all, sorry for my pronunciation, but mamá es enferma, Juan es alto. When it should be mama está. So what are they using? They're using ser instead of estar, right? They're just using ser for everything. Stage 3 is when they're starting to add a little bit more. Stage 4 is when they actually get it. I'm not even going to try to read that to y'all because I know you can read. But it's just a good example of, because I know instructionally, ser and estar is something that I know a lot of Spanish teachers are like, I have taught and taught and taught and taught and taught, and they don't get. And I guess it's the same for us, Jason, especially with Passé Composé. Why can't they remember which one uses être, which one uses avoir? So it's something to think about, especially in context of how does this impact how we teach? that's sort of what was really impactful to me going through this training, where I was like, oh my gosh, that's going to put my whole life on end. Okay, so going back to it, here was the answer about teaching. So teaching doesn't eliminate the stages, right? They're going to still go through those stages, and there's sometimes they could be in that stage for years. So if we go back to this last one, maybe they stay in stage 2 for a long, long time, and they never, by the time they're out of our classes, they don't get it. Something else will have to happen to push them into stage 3. Okay, so as you think about your own language skills, how close is your French or your Spanish to a native, or your English if you're not a native English speaker? How close is your language skill to native level, and how long did it take to get there? And I'll start, and I'll be real honest. My French has turned into the stuff that I teach in level 1, 2, and 3. Like I've noticed over 12 years of teaching, ooh, I'm so focused on the things that I have to teach in class, I have sort of like forgotten a lot of my other French, right? So I'll open it up if you want to. You definitely don't have to respond. This is kind of a personal thing, but if anybody has comments that they want to pipe in about this part real quick, anything, comments, concerns?
Oh, I'm a non-native Spanish speaker.
Yeah.
And I could totally tell the longer that I'm in the States and I'm not hanging around Spanish speakers, just speaking everyday language in the target language.
Right.
Oh, my Spanish fluency levels totally drop. I mean, I spend 1 month in Mexico and I'm good, but
Right.
if I'm not around Spanish speakers using that level of engagement all the time, I'm like you. I'm like, wow, I feel the same way. And
Yeah.
these are great 1, 2, and 3 level Spanish conversations, but it takes me a moment to kind of gear my brain back up when I'm in more extended conversation beyond just the Spanish class.
Yeah, it's a shock to the system when you're like, oh, but I know these words. Where are they in my head?
I was just had some students asking me today about, and it's always funny when people ask, well, like, are you fluent? I'm like, well, that's a rabbit hole. What does that mean? But like, I was saying like, the best I ever got with like French, is like French people not immediately just like pegging me as an American and being like, oh, well, maybe you're German, I was like, I don't sound like a native speaker. I probably never will, I was like, it's very exciting when people confused me as like, well, maybe he's not, they didn't immediately go, oh, he's an American. They're like, oh, maybe he's German, like, I was like, cool, we're heading in the right direction. Like,
I had a taxi driver one time. We were in Paris, I think on a school trip. I don't even know why I was there. And we were just talking, and he was like, where are you from? And I was like, oh, we're from Georgia. And he said, dude, your accent actually doesn't suck. Thank you. I'll take it.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. It was awesome. So anyways, I just tying this back into, while we're teachers, we're also still language learners, whether it's the language you teach or the language you have to operate in living in, Georgia. So the big question is, what implication does this have for what implications does this have for us as language instructors? I know there's so many conversations going on about curriculum at the moment, right? Like who's doing CI, who's doing grammar, where does grammar fit, what is CI, should we do CI, where do they produce the language, all of these conversations. But when you get down to the nuts and bolts of it, how does ordered development impact what we do as a teacher and what we do is like assessment? And I don't know if that's necessarily answerable today. It's really just a thought, like get in your head. One of the things that BVP mentioned, he said, linguistics is so understudied in the field of language teaching. And I thought that's really true. We learn like strategies for teaching a verb or strategies for student engagement, but we don't actually know a ton, at least coming out as with just a bachelor's. We really don't know a lot about actual language acquisition and like the linguistic side of it. Yeah, anyway, so open up the floor for conversations. What implications do you think order development might have for you as a language instructor? Anybody want to take a stab?
Well, I mean, certainly, like just like you were saying, like the first thing I thought was like, oh, I'm gonna have to be careful not to just use that as a cop out to be like, oh, well, they don't know, and it's not
Right,
my fault. It's just
right,
like ordered language.
right. Well, yeah, like I feel like I have a tendency as a teacher to be very easy when it comes to kids. Like, hey, I just need you to get some language out. I need you to get your message across.
Hmm.
And when I talk to more old school teachers, they're like, well, are you grading their grammar? Are you correcting it? And then there's just so many questions about feedback and
Hmm.
what are we teaching? What are we actually assessing? Those were my big questions. And I can't remember if I had another thing on this slide.
Yeah, there is one thing as an implication is the point that we had to reinvent our strategies and try to see from another perspective
Mm-hmm.
because when you were showing the thing about set start for English speakers, always gonna be an interference because it's only one. You see,
Right,
for us in Spanish, we have a different theme with different contexts, with different functions in the linguistic acts, right?
right.
And my position always is, wow, that is an issue. So I had to see the thing from another perspective and reinvent the strategy if it is possible.
For
You see?
sure. Well,
Yeah.
and so my question is, if we teach it, should we expect students to master it, especially in light of understanding order development? I distinctly remember when I was in school, here's your verb chart. I'm going to test you on if you can do all the verbs.
Hmm.
Okay, but
Mhm.
where's the communication in that?
Well, fluency in general though is a fluid thing. We're always growing,
Right.
increasing and decreasing
Mhm.
in fluency. So it's not a constant, and I don't think we should expect it to be a constant in a student, even within the context of our classroom. Now, I mean, brass tacks on that. Um, you
I was going
know,
to say, how do you put that into some curriculum, Jason?
so brass tacks on that though. Like even when you're grading things, maybe you should do a scaled grammatical errors.
Right.
Well, 1 to 3 errors. Okay, you lost a point. 4 to 7 errors. Okay, maybe you lost another point, but you didn't lose a point for every single grammatical error. As long as you were producing something in such a way that you communicated that I understood what you were trying to tell me.
Yeah.
So I'm not grabbing every grammar error, but I am still docking you some because you've produced so many errors that it does start to become a little bit of a communication issue. You follow
Well,
me? But there's some leeway there.
yeah, I use a rubric that I actually got from Comprehensible Classroom, and one of the indicators between novice high and intermediate low is my errors, or maybe it's novice mid and novice
Hmm.
high.
Hmm.
My errors do not impede comprehension versus my errors make it hard to understand my message. And so, like, I love using that rubric because it's like, I don't need to circle all of the wrong spellings. I don't need to highlight when you've used the wrong form of something. I can just tell you if you got your message across.
Right.
I love that rubric. But Jason, you're right about not having. I don't think we penalize kids for every single error because then we shut them down.
Hmm. That's something I think about a lot or kind of like struggle with is like that like what are we doing here?
Right.
Because like am I teaching the language or am I like introducing it? You know what I mean? Like and I find myself kind of like, just being like, look, it is I personally I look at it like if what you're looking at is like I'm going to teach kids how to like speak French or Spanish or German or whatever, like I'm probably just going to be chasing my tail and like making myself miserable because like I can't force them to find that interesting or like to get it or um
And for
Oh
those
and
yeah.
then I
questions,
find myself like, well, I don't want to just sit here and you be like, well, no, that's not how you pronounce that. No, that's not. That's the wrong. That's the wrong ending. It's an es actually. Like no, it doesn't sound different when you say it out loud. But like, oh, don't forget the elision. Like it has to be ils
mhm,
sont, not like You can really get like, and then I find myself wanting to correct it because but
because you were corrected,
yes, absolutely.
right? Well, so the answer to all of this is constant comprehensible input, and I'm not sure what side of this argument you guys fall on, but I'm falling on the side of if they understand the language and we can do things to get them to interpret it and also produce it, I think I'm doing my job. So for me, I'm definitely falling on the comprehensible input side, and I do stop and do grammar talks and explain things like Jason was saying, like, do I
Yeah.
need to teach you about it or teach you to use it? But it's sort of,
I can't fall as far on comprehensible inputs as probably you do, just because I still have the departmental pressure of knowing, because, the context of my school is we have, 5 Spanish classes going on at the same time, exact same
Mhm.
prep. And
Yeah.
so I can't, we just decided we can't do pure CI.
right,
It's not possible in a larger department like ours, because, they have to go into that next level with probably a whole nother Spanish 2 student versus who they have for Spanish 1. And there are some things that we need to know that everybody at least covered that. And so,
Yeah.
although we
Yeah.
will do CI, we can't do pure CI. It
Mhm.
wasn't functional for us.
Well, and I'm with you. I'm still tied to a curriculum that is from the textbook, and I've just sort of taken what I can out of it, and I CI it the best as I can.
Mhm.
Now, I don't love the tests that I have to give that are pure, like, can you conjugate? Can you pick the right verb? Can you do these things? I don't like that, but I got to do it too. So I have to teach to that as well, Jason. So I don't want you to think like I'm this master at comprehensible input. I'm really shifting because I was taught from textbooks,
Right.
from high school all the way up through college. Like I distinctly remember one of my college professors pulling out like a 17-page sheet of paper where she had diagrammed one sentence, and she's like a total grammar nerd. But like I was taught this way. This is how the way my brain works, and I remember and I feel because I taught that way that I have this huge high effective filter when I talk to native speakers that I want to sort of lower for my students. And so I'm leaning towards closer to CI to try to give them a better experience. Not that I had a bad experience. I obviously loved my experience because here I sit doing it. Um, yeah. So, anyways, that was sorry. That was a little bit of chatter.
I
Jason, you were
was
about to talk.
I was just thinking along those lines. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's doing a doctorate in world language education the other day, and we were talking about it. And she was like, I, you know, very much. She's like, I consider myself an eclectic approach because, and I was thinking, we were talking about it, and it's like I do think that there is like there's something to be gained from learning grammar. Um, I know for me personally, like most of the grammar that I understand just in broad strokes, even in English, like I learned because I learned about, well, indirect objects in French. So the first thing my teacher had to do was be like, well, this is what an indirect object is. You're like, oh, no one ever told me that before. And if it, I think there's value to being able to, compare like my language to this other language. And I think that's even one of the 5 C's, isn't it?
I was gonna say,
Like,
I think it's in a standard somewhere too.
yeah, so I think there is something to that. Um, but yeah, then also, you can see people's like eyes roll back in their head as you're like, okay, so now we're gonna take this, and like I can feel my eyes rolling back in my head. Like, this is boring.
Yeah, for sure. I like that. I like the eclectic approach. I feel like that's probably where most of us are. Probably where most of us are, actually. That's a good one.
Hmm.
I'm going to remember that. Tell your friend she's a genius.
Right.
And it works. I mean, be eclectic than this. I mean, teaching languages is the best. Yeah, let me tell you.
Yeah.
It
And
works.
Jason's in a different situation because he's got a big district and a big school and lots of staff. The rest of us are kind of small districts, small folks, not a lot of resources. So we don't get, before I got here, we had to have a professional development session for our whole school about, standards-based teaching, which is fine and good. But that's a little bit different in foreign language. Like our standards just operate differently. But we as small programs, small departments, we don't necessarily get sort of on the job training that would help alleviate some of these things or help grow us in our practice. So we're kind of in that odd situation where if we're not out there seeking new improvements on our own, we're not going to get it just by being at work, which is one of the reasons we have Starlight altogether to sort of fill that hole for those who need it. So anyways, I think that's the last of like the whole learning section for today. Trying to keep it short and sweet because I know we're probably all exhausted. Jason and I were talking before about just we've only been 3 weeks into this year and it feels like it should be September, I think already. Like so tired. But if you are interested, Bill Van Patten is actually really engaging. Has anybody ever listened to any of his stuff? Are you guys familiar with him? Okay, so I told you he's a linguist and a Spanish teacher. He's very fun to listen to. He's got some lectures on YouTube, but they're not like lectures. It's like somebody videoing him doing a lecture at a conference or something. But he had this phenomenal podcast. If you are a podcast user, it was called Tea with BVP, and so it's very sort of casual, but also guided towards let's talk about language acquisition and let's talk about what we should be doing in our classrooms. It's a really good podcast, right up there with a lot of other podcasts, but I think that he has actually stopped the podcast. I'm not sure. I don't think there's new episodes. He's also got he's also got 2 books that are available on the Actful website, and they're a little fuzzy, sorry. One of them is called While We're on the Topic, and the other is The Nature of Language, Bill Van Patten, and the podcast is Tea with BVP, Bill Van Patten. And this is not related to Bill Van Patten, but I don't know if you guys follow Florencia Hinshaw on Twitter. I'm going to type her name in there. She is a Spanish professor in Champaign-Urbana, and she has some YouTube videos that are amazing. She spends like 10, 12 minutes unpacking an important piece of like published literature about things specific to teaching language, and she sort of digests it and pokes holes in it and stuff like that. But she's got also a book. She and Marissa Hawkins, I think it's Marissa Hawkins. They have a book coming out within the next 2 months that is a really cool. I've read the sample, and I'm so excited for this book. But it marries second language acquisition research with practical uses and practical implications in the classroom, and so it's like the perfect thing that we should probably want to read. I'm very excited about it. I can't remember the name of the book, but I'm very excited about it. It comes out, I think the e-copy comes out in February. I will tell you what the name of it is. It is called Common Ground, and it's going to be coming from Hackett Publishing. This is not an ad for her, but I follow her on Twitter, and the book sample looks great, so I put the link to her book there. It will come out March for the ebook, but I think there's some previews coming out in February. She posted something the other day, and the print copy comes out in April, so it might be a good thing for summer reading, because I'm always thinking about like, okay, I can defend what I'm doing, but I can't defend it probably well enough to go toe-to-toe with an administrator if they say they don't agree with me. You know, I think just by the force of my personality, if I say it, they're like, oh, all right, cool, the French teacher thinks she knows what she's doing, just leave her alone. So I love the idea of having research that helps back up what it is that we do, because we are sort of really, nobody in administration, unless they were a language teacher, I think they don't really know what to do with us. Does anybody else feel that way? They're just like, sure, here's 3, here's a 3, I think I saw this. You're good. Come back next year, please, you know? So I love having like something that helps me bridge the admin world and the teaching world. So those are some resources. Jason, I will put in a follow-up email. Yes. And I will have that email ready for tomorrow. All right. So we've actually sort of done our reflections, considerations. We've had our discussion. Anybody have anything to add for the good of the group before we close down about today's topic? I feel like this is one that you have to marinate on and probably see in class and just reflect and do a little shifting to manage understanding it. Okay, so a couple things coming up. If you are going to flag, anybody going to flag? Jason, are you actually going to go? Yay, I'm going to. Johnny, are you going to flag?
I don't know yet. So it is in my agenda, but you know.
Well, it's Friday night through Saturday.
Yeah.
So I got the day off.
You know.
I'm going to drive over on Friday. I'll be there. It starts at 5. You may want to ask your principal. I asked my assistant principal, and she was like, use your department budget and you can pay for it. So go talk to your bookkeeper. Yeah. But the registration is $130 until February 1st, which is next Tuesday. At 5 p.m. it's going to go up, and you also have to pay your flag dues. So if you are looking, I'm really excited to go to an in-person conference. It's been 2 years, almost. No,
Yeah, almost 2 years.
yeah, because 2020 was like a week before the global shutdown. So that was the last spot. But
Yeah.
I'm very excited about it.
Mm.
And if you guys or anyone who's watching this video offline, if you guys are all there, I would love to like do like a meetup, maybe either Friday night, Saturday, during one of the breakout sessions. It'd be great to see everybody's like actual face, to know that we all exist
Right.
below fin level, you know? So some things to keep in mind. Do you guys have anything that I can help facilitate? I don't know if anyone was able to apply for any of the grants that came out. There was a cross-curricular grant. There was a rural grant. And my district, mine and Johnny's district, actually didn't qualify as rural. We're like an in-between district, so we didn't qualify for that. But I was just curious if anybody did the grants. I'd love to celebrate when you guys get them. Maybe some of the folks watching online maybe applied and got them. But anyways, as you guys know, if there's anything that you need or could use help with, I don't know all the answers, but I know enough people that somebody will know an answer somewhere along the way. So if you have anything, feel free to reach out and we'll try to get you something that you need. And if you need a certificate, guys, just scan that code and you will get an automatic certificate that says, hey, I was here. This is what we talked about. Awesome. So that is all I have for you guys today. I hope that you are doing well. I'm going to turn off the recording. If you guys want to stay and hang out and chat, we're fine to do that. We ended a little bit early today because, it's like January 93rd right now.
That's hilarious. Hey, thanks again for the reflection. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason. See you later.
Take care.
Thank you.